Hi all. Today we're talking about evolution through the matrix and why we are all here. So as we know, we are all fractal aspects or parts of God that is experiencing itself, right? So God sees itself through you as you. But we do need duality on this path because no shadow or no space without solid, as Alan Watts says, no solid without space, no light without dark, no dark without light. So in this vein, we have people that spin in different polarities, right, as they come in, and they will have a journey through this learn school, have 1,000 odd incarnations until they matriculate. Okay, and in this we have the service to self polarity, as well as the service to others polarity. And from the perspective of God, there really is no judgment towards this, although it does create carnage and a lot of pain in the 3D realm, which doesn't mean that Source does not care, right? Because remember, Source is experiencing you through you as you, so obviously Source cares a lot. But to realize that the opposite polarity is really important. The thing with service to self is they are less aware of the fact that we are all one. We are all pretty unaware of the fact that we are one, and it is time that allows me to think that I am me and you to think that you are you, as well as one point perspective, but also as I think it's Neil Donald Walsh who says, we are the waves and God is the ocean. So the wave is not separate from the ocean, it is the movement of the ocean. Then very importantly, if you are service to others, right, then most probably you're on the spiritual path, you're aware of ascension, you're aware of waking up, but the blind spot of this side, right, is naivety, because at some point we actually need to get selfish. If we need to ascend, we need to get boundaries, and we need to let go of unconditional acceptance of, or we should unconditionally accept, right? But we should act accordingly. I think sometimes people in the spiritual community can be a little bit of a floor mat, right? A little bit so awake that if somebody really hurts you, or if somebody lies, or if they're really unaware, we just keep on saying, oh shame, they're part of Source and everyone has their own path. And that is true, right? That is very true. But remember, we're experiencing this reality from different levels, right? And we are at the 3D level as well. If you have, let me take an extreme example, if you have a pedophile and that pedophile hurts a child, right, there has to be consequences for actions. That pedophile needs to go to jail so that other children can be safe, even though that person probably is hurting people because they were hurt and in their family they were hurt as well. So this is why I think prisons should rehabilitate, not just punish, right? Because that's the problem. When we judge, we just punish. When we discern, we try to rehabilitate. It is also true that many people, if you look at Klaus Schwab, if you look at the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, Bank of International Settlements, all the people at the top, the archons, are so incredibly service to self that, putting them in front of a psychologist and singing them love poems, it's not going to change them, right? Because it's thousands of years of evolution and selfishness, basically, right? At the end of the day, the service to self people show us, right, how important it is to grow. And there are beautiful mirrors, right? Because they show us where we don't have boundaries, they show us where we're naive, they show us where we still want approval, even if we're being hurt. And hopefully at the end of the day, we also show a mirror to them. So it's all love, everything else is imagined confusion. But to understand that at the 3-dimensional level, we should definitely have boundaries. And boundaries is not what you say to somebody, it's who you are, right? It's what you do. And self-love, right, is a very big part of ascension. We have to love ourselves. We have to look at others with compassion, but we also have to see what works for us and what does not work for us. Remember, it's the black and the white snake, the yin and the yang, and it's the integration of opposites. But once darkness gets alchemized, it turns into light eventually, right? Because all that really exists is the light, and the illusion of darkness was created, the illusion of separateness was created so that God could know itself experientially through our eyes. So this is a very important part for the empath, right? Of ascension, of evolution, of waking up, and that is to have boundaries and to actually experience anger, to look that emotion in the face as well, and not remain angry, not become bitter, right? But I think with the complete absence of anger, because we usually spiritually bypass that because we think it's we think it's unspiritual or unevolved. We'll even tell each other, oh, you're triggered, as if that's a bad thing. Yes, your triggers show you where you should heal. That's absolutely true. But you could be angry without being triggered. You can decide this is enough without being triggered. Only you would know if that were the case, and then you have to act accordingly. Remember, as we grow, as we love ourselves more and more and more, as we follow our path to extreme authenticity, right, we will lose people, because not everyone will like that, and they will throttle you. They will tell you, no, not that, not this, not the other thing. But we must always do shadow work, and we must love everyone on our path, right? It doesn't mean that they're in our lives. We can love them without them being in our lives. And this is a very difficult balance. I also think that one of the wounds that we have as empaths is trying to understand why people do what they do. Me being an interrogator, in relationships, I always want to understand. I want to ask questions. I want to get into your mind, and why you're doing what you're doing, and do you know that you're doing it, and do you know that you are being unconscious right now, and what's preventing you from not doing it. Unconsciousness is difficult to understand if you try to overanalyze it, right? Remember the 4 agreements. Don't take it personally. Very important. Don't overanalyze. Be impeccable with your word. Okay, so this means you're not going to talk bad about people. You're not going to triangulate. You're not going to talk bad about yourself. You're going to look at your own words about yourself and about others, and then try your very best. And then there's actually a book called The 5th Agreement. So this is also by Don Miguel Ruiz, and that is to be skeptical, right? So always question your own assumptions as well. You can always be proven wrong, right? You can always be proven wrong, but follow your discernment, decide what works for you, and live accordingly. I think we get stuck as empaths, right? Trying to understand. And then once we understand that hurt people, then we almost drown in compassion. And this is our weak spot, right? This is where that experience or person or group can actually attach to us and suck us dry, because we're being sucked dry, but we're like, oh, I understand that this is because you were wounded as a child. And I think a very, very important part of waking up, of really waking up and following your dreams and, radical personal responsibility is to cut people, out of your life without judging them. And this isn't necessarily permanent. With some people, it's absolutely permanent. The moment somebody physically hurts you, that's a cutoff, right? That's a cutoff. The moment you feel constantly drained around a person, that's a cutoff, right? People who inspire you to grow, people who inspire you to evolve, those are your tribe, and to, when you move on, not have hatred in your heart, right? To have forgiveness, to have kindness, to have understanding that we're all on our different paths, and to have respect for those paths and not to judge it. But I think very important to know the difference between discernment and judgment, because a lot of empaths think that if you discern, you're judging, and then we are in radical subjective relativism, right? Everyone's truth is their truth, and that's unfortunately not true. That's maze. Consciousness cannot find itself to the light, to truth, if everyone's truth is their truth, right? Ultimate truth does exist, right? It's not as ubiquitous, I mean, or so much as we actually realize. It's far more simple, but love, compassion, not hurting other people, right? That is important if you're on the spiritual path, or on any path really, of radical personal responsibility. Okay, so that's it for today. Have a lovely day.